Surprise, surprise, surprise. Hey, I am really excited for this week's Minute with Randy Bartlett. I read a wonderful article in DJ News from my friend in Chicago, Tamara Sims, all about surprising the bride and groom, and she was prompted by something she saw on a Facebook page where people were talking about whether or not you should surprise the bride. You should read the article. I don't want to go into what she covered, but it's brilliant, and she makes some great points. What I do want to jump off from there a little bit and talk about is two things. One is whether or not and how to surprise brides, and secondly, this notion that we all seem to become a part of where everything is all or nothing. You should never surprise the bride. Never say never. That's just a horrible thing. So let's talk about what surprises are and when and how to do them. I absolutely try to surprise our brides at every wedding with something. But the key is I'm never going to surprise somebody with something that they might not like. So let me give you an example. I would never surprise the bride by having her sit on the best man's knee to have the garter removed. I would never surprise the groom or the bride and groom by having the guy who catches the garter put it on the woman's leg who caught the bouquet. I would never surprise them with that. Those are things that I would discuss if I were going to do them and make sure they're on board. That's something some people might hate. Some people might be, okay on, and some people might love it. I would never surprise a bride by playing any version of the Shulywed or Newlywed game or Top 10 or any of those sorts of things. I would never surprise them by springing that game on them. But I might surprise them with something I do during the game, but I would absolutely make sure that they're into that sort of thing in advance and know it's coming. Even if it's really good, even if you do it really well, that point at which they're sitting there going, what's going on? It's not. You shouldn't be creating stress. So I wouldn't surprise them with that. I would never surprise the bride and groom, for example, by making the groom dance a sexy dance before removing the garter. I wouldn't do that. That's something that, even with the level of planning that I do, which is pretty extensive, that's just not a surprise I would pull on somebody. I wouldn't, it wouldn't be that kind of a surprise. I had a mother of the bride called me, this is several years ago. They had hired me, in large part, having seen me at another wedding, and saw me do the love story. And the mother of the bride called and wanted me as a surprise to do the love story as she was ready to walk down the aisle with her father for the ceremony. So the entire wedding party would have been up there, and then as she's ready to walk in, my voice would come in telling their love story. Mom was adamant that we do this, and I adamantly said, hell no. We are not surprising the bride with this. And she says, I'm sure she'll love it. And I go, she might in fact love it. But at the point when she's standing there with her father, ready to walk down the aisle for this unbelievable moment, and she starts hearing me talking, it would just take her out of that moment. So I wouldn't do the surprise. I said I'll run it by the bride. I thought the idea was horrible. I hated it. But if it was something they really wanted to do, I would have done it, but not without running it by her first. And the bride was like, no, I'm so glad you called me. So can we surprise a bride and groom? Yeah, I absolutely surprise brides whenever possible, and grooms, everybody, with our finale where we play back the highlights over the ending slow song. That's almost always a surprise. It's powerful. I've done it, literally hundreds of times. I've been doing that for 25 years. I've done it hundreds of times, maybe a couple thousand times. The worst I've ever gotten was not much. If I didn't do it well and it was at the wrong time and the crowd wasn't really into it. As I learned to do it better, the worst I ever get is amazing. So I would surprise them with that. But I would know what parts to put in. Like I wouldn't put a real super sentimental parts in for somebody who wasn't real super sentimental, right? I might go with the funnier parts. So I would surprise them with that. I used to do a lot where we would put the vows in the first dance. Did I surprise our couples with that? Some of them. I know our couples pretty well, so I might surprise them with that. But there's things that I had to know. And I've heard stories of DJs that did that, and the bride and groom were upset because they probably didn't do it very well. They didn't know their bride and groom very well. And I've even heard stories where they had a choreographed dance planned and this messed it up. Like, well, yeah, duh. How do you not know that, right? So I might do that. The second part of this, so can you surprise brides? Yes, absolutely. We keep saying brides. I should really always say couples. You should, by all means, find ways to take their breath away. Tamara makes that point really well in her article. And we should find ways to do that. But this fear of doing something wrong. What came up, and Tamara pointed this out in her article, was the number of people on this, I don't even know where it was, somewhere on Facebook, who were saying things like, well, whose name is on the contract? That's, because what had come up was, I think it was the father of the bride wanted to change the father-daughter song. And I've done that. But it doesn't matter whose name is on the contract. What matters is the relationship that I've developed and what would be involved. There are ways to go around this. I've had things that were presented to me to do as a surprise. I wasn't 100% sure, didn't want to ruin the surprise, but there are other things you can do. You can go to the mom, you can go to the maid of honor, you can go to other people who would really know whether this would go well. And I would absolutely do that. I have a wedding coming up. I'm doing a planning session this afternoon. And both the bride and groom lost their dads in the last year. So that part's going to be sort of an emotional part. I've written in advance what I think they will really like as a dedication, something that we've done many times, where we dedicate the entire celebration to these two men. And I've written out a script which I'll present to them today. I wouldn't dream of doing that as a surprise. And in fact, if they like what I've done, and they may like the concept, but they may not like the wording, we may tweak that around a little bit. Once we decide that, if they say yes, we want to do that, the next thing would be, well, let's talk to the moms and make sure the moms know. Because both of them lost their husbands. One was 25 years married, one was 37 years married. I don't want them surprised with this at that moment. I don't want them overwhelmed. So I'm pretty sure they'll like it. I've met with the couple already. I have some pretty good ideas where we're going to go, but that's not going to be a surprise for them. So I don't care whose name is on the contract. I don't care who's asking. It's the same thing with a request. When somebody comes up and, father of the bride comes up and wants me to play a really bad request just because he's writing the check. I don't care who's writing the check. I'm going to do the right thing for the party. Now, it would have to be a pretty far out there thing for me to not do something for the father of the bride. But it doesn't, not because their name is on the contract, or not because I'm worried about some liability issues. We talked in the last couple of weeks about how to avoid small claims court. Just do a really great job, man. Nobody wants to sue you. Do a really amazing job. Make it the greatest day of their life. Nobody's going to sue you. So you don't have to worry about these, liability issues. Surprise people by all means, but make sure you know that they're going to love the surprise. Nobody's getting left out or hurt with any of that. And go back, if you haven't already done so, it's in the last episode or the last issue of Disc Jockey News, and read Tamara Sims' article. As usual, she's brilliant, and she makes a really good point about how we've gotten away from doing the right things for our clients. So I went a little over a minute. Surprise! Bet you didn't see that coming. See you next time.